Well, good morning, and can I welcome everyone to this, the 30th meeting of the Public Audit Committee in 2024. We have apologies this morning from the Deputy Convener, Jamie Green, and we are joined on video link this morning by Committee Member James Dornan. Agenda item 1 for the committee is to decide whether or not this morning to take agenda items 3 and 4 in private. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. Thank you very much. The second item on our agenda and our principal item this morning is further consideration of the Auditor General for Scotland's briefing on Scotland's Colleges 2024. So I'm very pleased to welcome our witnesses this morning. We're joined by Neil Rennick, who's the Director General for Education and Justice at the Scottish Government, who's joined by Shirley Lang, who's the Director for Lifelong Learning and Skills in the Scottish Government. I'm also pleased to welcome Martin Boyle, who's the Interim Chief Executive of the Scottish Funding Council, and Martin is joined this morning by Richard McConaughey, who's the Director of Finance at the Scottish Funding Council, and by Lynn Rayside, who's the Deputy Director, Policy and External Affairs at the Scottish Funding Council. As usual, members of the committee have got quite a number of questions to put to you, but before we get to those questions, I'm going to invite, first of all, Neil Rennick, and then after Mr Rennick, Martin Boyle, to make some opening remarks. So over to you, Director General.
Thank you, Convener. I welcome this opportunity to provide evidence on behalf of the Scottish Government in relation to Audit Scotland's report on Scotland's colleges. While the Audit Scotland report describes some challenging circumstances, it also rightly recognises and endorses the high value of the college sector. Scotland's colleges fulfil invaluable roles at local, regional and national levels in providing opportunities for learners, disproportionately from the least advantaged communities, enhancing skills and facilitating economic growth. We fully recognise the financial challenges described in the report facing the sector and individual institutions. As the Scottish Funding Council noted in its report on the financial sustainability of colleges, the sector is not homogeneous, and there is significant variation in the financial position of individual institutions. The financial sustainability of the sector is also extremely fluid, with assumptions constantly updated as circumstances change. The college sector has always evolved. In fact, a major strength is its responsiveness to both pivot towards emerging skills needs and enable learners to fulfil their potential. Education Scotland's report acknowledged this, noting that the dedication and adaptability demonstrated across colleges have laid a robust foundation for enhancing learner attainment and progression. And the latest data shows that the college sector is providing learners with a positive experience, with more than 9 out of 10 college learners satisfied with their experience. The sector depends on effective strategic leadership, and I recently met with the college chairs to discuss the challenges facing the sector, but also to hear about how institutions are responding to those challenges and how we can work together to help encourage colleges to adapt. As the Audit Scotland report notes, the Tripartite Alignment Group, which brings together Colleges Scotland, the SFC and the Government, is helping to support collaborative working and to encourage and facilitate reform. The Audit Scotland report also highlights the Scottish Government's role in setting the direction of reform across the post-school education and skills landscape. An appetite for reform exists across the sector, recognising, as we all do, that whilst there is much good in the system, there is also a need to adapt to changing circumstances and demands. And I'm sure those are issues that the committee will want to raise today.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr Boyle, do you want to make a statement?
So good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to give evidence today in relation to Audit Scotland's report on Scotland's Colleges 2024. Colleges play a vital role in Scotland. They provide learners with a high-quality education, and they play an important role in reaching those furthest from the labour market. They provide a pipeline of skilled workers and deliver wider economic benefits at a national level. And they also deliver world-class skills was recognised recently at the World Skills Championships, with 22 finalists receiving medals or commendations. They deliver across Scottish Government's priorities to eradicate poverty, growing the economy and to tackle the climate emergency, amongst many others. The sector is very resilient. It has a strong track record of delivering reform and responded exceptionally well to the COVID-19 pandemic. Colleges are constantly evolving to respond to changing demographics and employer and student needs. And the financial environment that they operate in remains challenging. We set out these challenges in our annual report on the financial sustainability of the college sector, and that was alongside the mitigating actions we have seen colleges take to respond to these challenges. While securing a sustainable college sector relies on the way institutions manage themselves and adapt to changing circumstances, the Scottish Government and the Scottish Funding Council can support the sector by helping to create the conditions that enable these vital institutions to thrive. So when we consider the financial health of the college sector today, we need to do so with a view of the college sector of the future, whether this is in our funding distribution, in our infrastructure plans, or in how we set outcomes and get assurance from them. And we will continue to work together with the sector and the Scottish Government to secure a sustainable college sector fit for the future, one that continues to deliver for learners, employers and communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And I think I can safely speak on behalf of the Public Audit Committee in saying that we all want the further education college sector to succeed. And any criticisms that are contained in the Auditor General's report or any probing which we embark on this morning is not to do down the college sector, but to see what can be done to make sure it's performing to the best of its potential. I'm going to go straight to questions and invite Graham Simpson to put some to you. Graham.
Thanks very much, Convener, and good morning, witnesses. Now, this session, we run the risk of it being a bit all doom and gloom, but of course it's not all doom and gloom in the sector. Mr. Boyle, you mentioned World Skills UK. What you didn't mention was that New College Lanarkshire won World Skills UK when it was held in Manchester. So there is a shining example of how a college in Scotland can actually beat the rest in the UK. So if we can start on that bright note, you're itching to get in, Mr. Boyle, to explain why you failed to mention
No,
that.
no, not at all.
Go ahead.
No, I think it's a fantastic result for New College Lanarkshire. It shows the hard work, the dedication, etc. I would just try to be Scotland level rather than being individuals, focused on individuals.
I mentioned it because it's in my region, but I also mention them because there is a college that has been not, and they're not alone, but they've been up against it financially. We've asked in this committee before. I've specifically asked about particular colleges that were let's say in peril, and there was a list that the Scottish Funding Council had. You know we've asked about this before. You've probably watched the sessions where there were a quite short list of colleges at particular risk. So what I'd quite like to explore is where we are now with that position.
Shall I try and answer that, Mr. Simpson? First of all, good to hear you talk about New College Lanarkshire. You'll no doubt have spoken to the principal. You know that we have been working with that college, and I think the work we've done with them has paid some really good outcomes you can see coming through now. So there's a degree of confidence that they are on a good path at the moment. They have challenges, as all the sector does. But you asked more generally about the number of colleges, as you put it, in peril. I suppose what I would say is as you'd expect of us, we regularly review the financial situation and sustainability of the whole sector, and we do that through a variety of means, through set points in the year where we monitor and assess and analyse various returns from colleges, including their annual accounts. But we also have our outcome agreement managers meet regularly with the colleges to find out what's going on with their curriculum and other performance measures. And my own team, the finance and sustainability team, meet regularly with them to see what's going on. We currently have 4 colleges which we would consider that we're working intensively with. That's down from the last time, I think, when the Auditor General mentioned there were 6. But I think that shows that it is very fluid, and that in a positive way you could see that interventions that we've made have had an effect. But it's also a reflection that time moves on.
Okay, thanks for that. So there are 2 colleges which are now no longer on that list. So what have they done, or what have you done with them, if you want to?
Well, one of them we have worked with, and we helped them put in some specialist consultancy work to look at their costing methodologies and options for them.
Sorry, I didn't hear the first. Did you mention a particular college?
I didn't, but we've already mentioned that college.
Right, that's New College, Lanarkshire.
Yeah.
Right.
And we worked with the leadership team there to look at the options available to them. Their situation is turning around, and I think they have a good prognosis. But it will take time. We'll have to monitor that over several years. But they, I would think, are off the highest level of engagement. But we continue to work with them.
Okay. I mean, that's obviously good news in my own region, but there are other colleges elsewhere which are still on that list. Has their position got worse or better since we last explored this issue?
I would say it's steady. What I would say is all the interventions we make take time to put in place, to carry them through and then see the impact. I would say that the colleges that you're referring to are in a steady state at the moment.
Well, I mean, if we look at Appendix 1 in the Auditor General's report, which it looks at the operating position and cash balances for 22-23. Now, I realise that's not right now, but if you look at that table, then 11 colleges were in have got worse, and only 3 had got better. If we were to produce that table now, what would the position be?
If we were to produce it at the end of 23,
Yeah.
24,
Yeah.
I have that somewhere, if you give me a minute. Have you got those figures to hand? So what I've got is we haven't finalised the analysis yet, but so far the data we've got points to 18 colleges expecting to report adjusted operating deficits for 23-24, compared to 21 which reported deficit last year.
Sorry, 18 have
18
deficits.
are expecting to report adjusted operating deficits for 23-24.
Adjusted operating deficits. Does that mean worse deficits or better? Or
it
better?
means after you take account of one-off transactions and non-cash adjustments.
So are they in a better position or a worse position?
Individual colleges, I think, are their position is tightening.
Tightening?
Tightening, yeah. They have it is an adverse position for them.
Worse?
Yes.
Right. So that 18?
18.
18 are worse than the previous year.
Their deficits are growing.
Okay.
But the number of colleges is fewer.
That's correct. So 18 are worse, and the rest are either better or about the same?
I would say holding steady.
Holding steady. Does that mean the same or better? What are you actually trying to say here?
I'm saying that with flat cash, it's a tightening position for the sector.
Okay. You're talking a bit in riddles, Mr. McConaughey. Just use plain English. Assume we don't, necessarily understand the terms you're using.
Well, budget allocations are flat cash. Costs continue to rise. Therefore, they will have less operating surplus, or they will have an increasing deficit.
Okay, so it's still quite clearly challenging. So I suppose the question for the Funding Council and the government is, what are you both doing to make things better?
Well, I'll maybe hand over to Martin and colleagues in a second. Obviously, we keep in close contact with the Funding Council, but one of the key developments over the last year, it started in, I think, met for the first time in August 2023, was the establishment of the tripartite alignment group that includes the Scottish Government, the Funding Council and colleges, to talk about the sorts of actions and flexibilities that can assist colleges to respond to the challenges that they're facing, and also seize the opportunity for transformation and reform as well to try and respond to those pressures. But if it's okay, I'm happy to hand over to SFC to talk more about the detail of the specific projects under the tripartite group, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, while we're doing things as well, colleges themselves have a role to play in making sure they, in returning to a break-even or surplus position, their board and their management teams have responsibility for the strategic planning and management of the business. But that doesn't mean we don't come in and help them. So, at the tripartite group, as been mentioned, there's been a number of things. So one of the main things we've done is change some of our funding distribution model. Well, that does not change the quantum of the budget. What it's done is given a lot more flexibility to individual colleges. Colleges are keen for planning certainty, so it's important for them to understand what our funding model changes will deliver, and we try to protect the colleges from volatility by reducing their exposure to funding recovery. So through this approach, more money is staying.
What do you mean by that? Sorry, exposure to funding recovery.
So if a college doesn't deliver enough, this is we get into technical, so we don't deliver enough credit, so if there's not enough students claiming, not enough full-time equivalent students, then we would recover some of their money.
You take money back?
Yeah. But what we've had to do is recognise that colleges have got a lot of fixed costs.
Yes.
So whether, if the students don't come, the costs are still there, the cost of trying to recruit, the costs of having a building there, heating it, lighting it, running a class that's maybe not got enough people on it. But that cost is still vital for the local economy or whatever. So we've tried to recognise that we've got fixed costs. So we changed the model to do that, which has meant that the colleges are much less exposed to funding recovery. So we've recognised these fixed costs, and we also increased the price we paid per credit. So that means there's more investment in the teaching of individual learners.
So are you saying? I'm interested in this tripartite group, and I've got a question around that about how is that in itself scrutinised? I mean, is the Auditor General, for example, cited on its work?
Certainly, the Auditor General's report mentions the work of the tripartite group, so obviously he will speak for himself, but it's included within the report.
Okay.
Yes,
of course.
Thank you. It's just in terms of the tripartite group, one of the other actions that the group is looking at in terms of helping the college sector is around asset disposal. And we're hoping that there will be guidance coming out to colleges in early 2025 that will make it easier for them to dispose of assets and keep that money in the college sector. And that's a piece of work that's been done through the tripartite group as well.
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because I was going to ask about that later. We may as well do it now. The current position is that if a college sells off things, asset disposal, could be buildings, for example, how much of that money are they allowed to keep at the moment?
There's a de minimis amount of 500k, in which case they would keep that without approval. Thereafter, it should go to a decision from the Minister as to how it will be used. All monies through disposals must be retained within the sector and spent on the sector.
Yeah.
But what we are trying to do is we're trying to encourage and give colleges more opportunity to be, if you like, commercial and entrepreneurial, to realise the benefit of their assets for their use. So what we've tried to do with the Minister's support is make it a presumption that the monies will stay with the college that is selling the asset, and they can reinvest it in an approved scheme.
And has that new policy been approved yet?
It has been approved, but we're still finalising the guidance.
Right.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
So if a college was to sell off something and got £3 million for it today they would have to...
At the last tripartite, group we discussed, I suggested that we should work on an assumption that if anything was sold today, that we could accelerate the new rules so that they could be an early adopter.
Right.
So that we encourage that behaviour now.
Okay. Okay.
So all the time we're trying to make sure the college benefits from its own assets.
Yes, which obviously will be of great benefit to individual colleges. So really you're waiting for somebody to go for it and then you can say, right, you're first.
Yeah, and we are talking to a couple of colleges about that. We are trying to fine-tune certain aspects of the guidance and the rules, but we do not want to deter any colleges who are currently thinking about that.
Right. Okay.
So we're trying to be as proactive and, to use the word positively, permissive as we can be.
Yeah. Okay. That's really useful. Thanks, convener.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I mean, can I turn to what's a fairly routine, fundamental question that we ask witnesses, which is, do you accept the findings and recommendations in this Audit Scotland briefing? I'll ask that question first of all of Neil Rennick.
Yes, yes. I think Mr Simpson, as he mentioned, we have to see it in the wider context of the performance of colleges overall and the many positive developments that there are as well. But in terms of the content of the report, yes.
And Mr Boyle, does the Scottish Funding Council accept the findings and recommendations?
Absolutely, as Neil says.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, so again, just to reflect on the answers you've just given us, you do accept that there is a flat cash settlement and that represents a 17% real terms cut in funding for Scotland's further education colleges?
In terms of the way it's presented in the report, that's correct. In terms of between this year and the previous year, the Funding Council has managed to maintain the level of funding for teaching within the sector at the same level as 23-24.
Right, we're going to come on to that because I mean, my understanding is that the range of college courses has contracted as a result of those flat cash settlements, real terms cuts. And to you, Mr Rennick, I think you said in your opening statement that learners at our colleges are disproportionately from the least advantaged communities.
Yes.
So have you carried out any equality or economic impact assessment of the reduction in courses?
We do have information on the proportion of students who, not just in terms of students from disadvantaged backgrounds, but students with disabilities, students with care experience, and those statistics over the medium term have been moving in a positive direction, and colleges have a strong record of having a diverse range of students. We know that part of the work that colleges are doing is to adapt the courses that they are providing to better reflect the needs of the local economy and local employers. So that will always involve some change, and that's constantly happening across colleges in terms of what their offer is. For example, we see far more an increase in part-time courses relative to full-time courses, but that's then reflected in higher satisfaction levels among students of part-time courses who are happy with the learning they're getting, and that fits well with their needs in terms, for example, of going into work.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said in the session with the Auditor General that it's important to put on the record that colleges provide an important bridge for people from those disadvantaged backgrounds, those deprived communities, a bridge into work, a bridge to retraining, a bridge to some of them into higher education from further education, but they also provide a bridge from social isolation. And certainly when I speak to people in the colleges sector, they tell me that there are some people who are perpetual students that keep enrolling onto courses. And in part, that does perform a certain social function. Other people that otherwise would be left behind, would be isolated, would be cut off from society, find some purpose in life by enrolling onto college courses. So I guess going back to my first question, I'm asking whether you've made any kind of assessment of the contraction of courses available, whether that has or will have an unequal effect on learners.
Statistics on, so I'll defer to the Funding Council.
So I'm happy to say a couple of things about that. So what we have to remember as well is that colleges are responsible for determining their own course provision. They decide what's needed locally, what local employers want, what the demand locally is from students. They engage with a whole range of different people, as Ms Leonard said, including MSPs. I mean, college provision also changes regularly. It's not as if it stays the same forever, and I'm sure we all know this, but on a yearly basis, they're looking at what they offer. Is it still relevant? Is it still up to date? Is it still what the local employers need and what they expect? Has there been employers closed down, new employers arrived, that sort of thing? So they're always looking at changing. So on a regular basis, colleges will change what they do. Because of the interest we've been looking at, and colleges offer a huge amount of courses, so it's very hard to get into the minute detail. But when we look at it, and when we look at the courses that have disappeared or are being closed down, our analysis shows that the withdrawn ones tend to be ones with very low uptake. They're not courses with 30 people on them, 50 people, 100 people, where they're popular and they're just being closed down. They're actually ones where there's not a great demand for. And that's happening across the sector all the time. Things that have got lower qualification, lower numbers are closing down, and new things start up across the college to reflect local needs and local demands.
I suppose the fundamental question that people have got is, to what extent are these changes educationally driven, economically driven, socially driven, and to what extent are they simply financially driven?
I would expect it's a combination of all of those factors, but what we are looking for is for colleges to be providing the learning that students are looking to undertake and aligning with the needs of the local and regional economy in terms of what they're providing. So just looking over the longer term in terms of that widening access, the latest student population figures that we have from the SFC from 22-23 show that over that 10-year period from 2013 to 2023, the proportion of students who came from the poorest economic backgrounds increased, the proportion of students who are care experienced also increased. So there was progress over that last decade.
Yes, Lynn Rayside, you want to come in?
Thank you. It's just to build on something that Martin was saying. So our latest analysis of of qualifications that have been withdrawn, as Martin says, has shown that those are courses that have less demand or low demand. However, through our outcome framework and assurance model, which has just been launched this year to replace our outcome agreements, We will be engaging through our outcome managers, and if there are any emerging themes which show that course provision is changing for reasons that are not reflective of demand, then that is something that we will consider through a thematic review, and we will look at in more detail. So that's because colleges and universities too, through this outcome framework, have to meet certain outcomes, one of which is around student interests and also around employer needs as well.
Richard McConaughey.
It was just to circle back to one of your earlier comments, Chair, about the reduction in the funding. You mentioned that the Audit Scotland report identified the reduction as 17%. That does include some large elements of demand-led funding, so student support funding. So we reduced the budget because it was not being taken up. But I want to assure you that the amount of money that we put into teaching funding has remained constant, and indeed we've increased the value of the credit value for individual learners over that time.
Okay, I think we've got some questions on the funding formula. Can I just move us on to another area which is contained in the Auditor General's briefing, and I think we've subsequently followed up with correspondence with College Employers Scotland, Unison and Unite, and I should point to my register of interests and my membership of Unite the Union. The picture that we get back from College Employers Scotland is that they are committed to the job evaluation process for non-teaching staff, that they are committed to backdating any agreement through the job evaluation, I think, to 2018. There are various perspectives on it. I think the Unison perspective seemed to be fairly frank and robust. The Unite perspective was, well, certainly finished up by saying Unite and our members have lost faith in the project. Some members have also lost interest, but other members are frustrated as they are confident that job evaluation would have delivered an increase in pay, which they have been waiting for this last 5 years or so. So there is pent-up demand. There is an outstanding job evaluation process. There seems, at least from the reading of the replies we've had from the employer side as well as the trade unions, a willingness to get this resolved. But that does have financial implications. How is that going to be funded?
I should say at the outset, as you will recognise, the Scottish Government is not directly involved in the job evaluation process. It comes out of the negotiations between the college employers and their staff representatives. So the Scottish Government is not actively involved in the process. Like you have read the letters from Colleges Employers Scotland and the two trade unions that set out a range of reasons for the time it's taken to progress that work. There is a commitment, as you say, to backdate the outcome of that work back to 2018, and following discussion with the Scottish Funding Council and engagement with them, there's agreement that the Scottish Government will look at the financial implications once that work concludes in terms of responding to it. But as I say, we're not involved in the actual detail of the evaluation.
Yeah, but does the Scottish Government, does the Minister not have any responsibility at all for making sure the outcome of a job evaluation process, which is an objective assessment of whether people are being paid correctly? I mean, there may be some people who will get paid less as a result of job evaluation, but obviously there's also an expectation that some people will receive an uprating in their pay to reflect the duties which they've got. So does the Scottish Government not take any responsibility for that at all?
Yeah, there's a commitment to respond to that, but clearly we wouldn't want to preempt what the outcome of the process is. But once it reaches a conclusion, there's a commitment that will be funded.
Okay. Mr. Boyle, does the Funding Council have a perspective on this?
I think, like the Scottish Government, that's an issue between College Employers Scotland, college employers and the unions and the staff. We would like to see it resolved as well, but ultimately we can't really intervene in that space.
Okay, but you may have to intervene in that space if there is a net increase in the budget for staffing that results from the job evaluation process. Yeah,
and that, as the Scottish Government said, they will fund. It's their responsibility to fund that, and they have They've made that assurance already.
So again, just to be clear about this process, if the job evaluation exercise is concluded and there is a net additional cost in staffing for non-teaching staff as a result of it, the Scottish Government will stump up the money to cover that and hand that over to the Scottish Funding Council, who will in turn make sure that colleges can pay those non-teaching staff what they are now due. And there will be a backdated element to that as well.
Yeah, there's a commitment to look at the outcome, but as with any public expenditure.
But no, hang on a minute. A commitment to look at the outcome is different from saying we're going to pay it. We're going to honour it.
Yeah, there's a recognition the Scottish Government would take on any financial responsibilities that arise from that. But as with any public spending, that has to be assessed as whether or not that's regular and appropriate and value for money in terms of what's out of that. But we would look at that at the time once we see the outcome of the job evaluation and the basis for that.
But forgive me, Mr Rennett, you give me two contradictory answers there. Either the government is going to honour the financial implications of an objective job evaluation exercise conducted by the employers and the trade unions, overseen by some independent expertise. Either it's going to honour the outcome of that or it's not.
Yeah, we will honour the outcome of that. And obviously that has to be based on seeing what the outcome of that process is and what the process is. I don't know if there's anything Shelley wanted to add to that.
No, I think you've really covered it all, Neil. I mean, ultimately, the Scottish Government has agreed that responsibility for meeting the commitment rests with us. But until we see the outcome of that process, we can't then get into the due process Neil has described in terms of our normal budget and financial processes that we follow. Of course, it's also really important that there is as little delay in all of this as possible. It has been going on, as you say, for some time. There's a commitment that will be backdated to 2018, but we expect that process to be robust and fit for purpose. And we have no specific role and no actual role in the process itself because it's part of national bargaining. So we need to await the outcome of that. But we have committed as a government to, to the responsibility for taking forward that commitment rests with us once we see the outcome.
But I'm going to bring Mr Simpson as well. But you're saying that you are you're willing to fund it, but that's subject to the amount that's entailed in it. That's subject to whether you approve of the methodology of the job evaluation. I mean, it seems to me that you're dipping in and out with the extent to which you're prepared to intervene in this. Either you are saying this is a matter for this is not a matter for the government. This is a matter for the employers and the trade unions to sort out. If the trade unions and the employers sort it out, isn't it then the responsibility of the government to step in to say, you've carried out a job evaluation, these are the results, there'll be some losers as well as some winners, possibly, and how do we deal with that? But we've got a commitment to those employees, to those workers.
Absolutely,
that they
and
will
forgive me if I wasn't clear enough, that's exactly what I meant. I just meant, obviously, there's internal budgetary processes that we now then get into, but absolutely, it's a matter, the Scottish Government's not involved in the process, but as and when we have the outcome, we have committed that it's our responsibility to then take forward the outcomes of that process.
OK, thanks. Graham Simpson, he wants to come in just quickly on this point before I bring James Dornan in.
Just to follow that up, so has the Scottish Government got a budget for this? Is there a bottom line?
It's recognised as a pressure and a liability that will emerge in due course. The actual scale of that is not known. I think some guidance went out recently from the Scottish Funding Council to individual colleges about how to reflect that in their accounts, and people who are more expert than me are reflecting that within the Scottish Government accounts as well.
But if you're hit with a bill at the end of this exercise for 10 million or 20 million or 30 million, whatever it is, I don't know, at some point that could be a figure that the government says, well, hang on a minute, we can't afford that. You must have thought about that.
Yes, and there's a recognition, and it's identified as a future cost that will need to be reflected in the same way that there are other future costs that we're planning for. We plan for as well.
So it's possible, if that figure is too big, that the government will not fully fund it.
Well, I think nothing changes my personal responsibilities as accountable officer to ensure that we're using public funds appropriately, and I'll provide advice to ministers at the time in terms of how we respond to the outcome of that process. But the commitment is there that the process could result in some additional costs, and that the Scottish Government would support the SFC in funding that.
But you might not fully fund it.
Well, I can't say because I wouldn't
Because you don't know the figure.
Well, I can't preempt what the outcome of the process is or what the associated costs are. But we believe that the Colleges Scotland, the Colleges Employers Scotland, and the trade unions are engaging in that process in good faith, and we would respond in the same way.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to invite James Donnan to put some questions to you, which will continue with this theme of staffing and what the position of the workforce in the colleges sector is, and how that's been funded and handled. So, James, do you want to put your questions to the panel?
Thank you, Convener. You've already discussed the job evaluation in some detail there, but there are a couple of things that I think should the impact of the reductions in staff and course delivery. Can I ask, before you give me the answer on the impact, what thought was given to how redundancies came about? Is it anybody can apply and get accepted with, or is there a criteria for those who are accepted for redundancy? For example, is this, if there's too many of one type of job in a certain place, is there only X amount that's allowed to get it, etc.?
In terms of, again, I'll hand to Funding Council colleagues, but in terms of the actual management of employees and arrangements for redundancy, those are considered by the individual colleges as the employers, so they decide what the scheme the scheme arrangements will be, what the criteria will be for those that might apply, and that varies across different institutions. But the institutions do need to engage with the Scottish Funding Council in terms of the processes that they are following to ensure that those are appropriate. But I'll hand over to Funding Council colleagues.
I add a little to that. I think Neil has stolen much of my thunder, though, that it is a condition, the conditions of any voluntary severance scheme are for the college leadership and the Board of Management to determine. SFC has a function to fulfil to make sure that that is carried out correctly and in line with the SPFM and Code of Governance. And under our financial memorandum, we require that colleges consult us and seek our approval for voluntary severance schemes, and we assess it on those basis. We are also issuing new guidance that will come out in hopefully spring, early summer, on widening what we require them to tell us about, including curriculum impact and effect on learners. But that's tied up with waiting for the SPFM to be signed off.
Yeah, because I was just going to ask about the impact of the reductions in staff on post-delivery. But I suppose I go back to the same question. That you say that the colleges can make their own decisions, but is there any oversight that says that these decisions are clearly going to be harmful for the college and course delivery, etc.? Or is it just up to the college and then we suffer the consequences or benefit from it later on?
It's primarily for the Board of Management to decide on, but as I was, and I didn't elaborate enough, we will be seeking assurances that the curriculum and the delivery and the quality of delivery is not adversely affected under the new guidance.
If you believe it's not, then what happens?
If we think it has been adversely affected, then we would intervene in the scheme. Okay. They do need our approval to proceed with the scheme.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at, right? Okay,
but we haven't got there yet, Mr. Doran. So
no, I know that. Aye. Have you got any update on impact of reductions on course delivery yet?
What I would say is that so far, what we've had reported to us, that courses that have been removed. They have been low take-up, so therefore we are told that this is not adversely affecting the offering. We've, as far as I know, we've not got into compulsory redundancies yet, which is a good thing.
Right, okay. Do we have figures for the split between teaching and support staff who've been offered and taken up voluntary severance?
I do not have them to hand, but we can get them and write to you.
Yes, that'd be very helpful. Thanks very much for that. And just for the sake of clarity, the Scottish Government have said that they will fund the agreement if it's agreed between the trade unions and employers.
That's the commitment that we've made.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Convener. That's
okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to invite Colin Beattie to put some questions to you next, and I think there are some things we might return to before we conclude. But Colin Beattie.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to first have a look at the pace of reform, which isn't particularly good. The reasons for the slow pace of change in reforming the post-school landscape and reforming regional arrangements, what's the reason for that?
I'll let Shirley come in.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in on that one. Can I just clarify, Mr Beattie, is it the broader reform programme you're asking over, or you talked about regional stuff as well, then is it more the Regional Strategic Board point you were wanting me to cover?
This isn't related to the consultation that's been completed by the Scottish Government in September 2024, but the pace of getting there has been so slow.
Yeah. Forgive me, there were two consultations, both of which concluded in September 2024. So we've consulted on the simplification of the funding body landscape, and we've also consulted on the regionalisation of the strategic board. So I'm happy to talk about both. It was just where would you like me to start?
Well, start with the regional.
Happy to do that. So in terms of the position, as I have now said, we consultation closed in September, and we're analysing those responses at the moment. You asked about the pace of that reform. We had initial advice from SFC in that space back in 2020. The pandemic then hit. It was again then 2023 before we got more detailed recommendations from SFC in that space. At that point, of course, we were also publishing the Withers report and purpose and principles, so we felt it only right and proper that we look to those recommendations and review them in light of Withers. Once that had happened, we then went out to consultation, which is what's happened this year. So that's why there's been a bit of quite a long time span in getting to where we're now at.
It's actually a bit longer than that, because I remember when back to 2014, shortly after the regions were put together, tacked together in some cases, there was an immediate undertaking. There was going to be reform of those arrangements. That was probably 2015-16, and to my mind it's been dragging on since then.
Well, as I say, I would hope that ministers would be in a position to say something more in this space soon.
Slightly enigmatic, but okay. Well,
we're analysing the responses from the consultation, and then ministers will review after that.
Okay. And the post-school landscape?
Yes. So there are 5 interconnected streams of work going on in that space. So there's work on simplification of the funding body landscape, work around skills planning, apprenticeships, careers support and qualifications reform. Those are all interconnected, and they're all at slightly different stages of development. But within the programme for government this year, you will have seen that 3 of those 5 were covered. So in terms of simplification of the post-school funding landscape, we consulted on that over the summer. That closed in September, and the PFG does commit to a bill in that space. We are also committing to our national approach to skills planning, where First Minister committed to bringing together employers, colleges, universities and other partners to ensure that the system is responsive to the needs of the economy, and we're taking forward our work on improving careers support. And in the first instance, that's working with the Career Service Collaborative to plan the next phase of its work. And just for completeness, in the other two areas, in both apprenticeship reform and looking at qualifications reform, there are working groups being set up, starting to scope out where next and where to go in those spaces. As I said, they're all kind of interconnected and they're all at slightly different stages.
There seems to be, as you say, a number of groups that have been established to carry out work. What's actually expected to be achieved in the short and long term with these groups? It's a wee bit unclear.
So the point of the whole process and the whole reform programme, which we anticipate could, it's a kind of transformation programme over a number of years, but it's about driving agility and efficiency of the system. It's also about making the system simpler for learners to navigate and access and understand. And it's also about ensuring that we maximise the investment that there is in the system. So there's kind of three aspects to it.
It's, as I said before, it seems to have been going on for many years now. And, I do remember similar discussions around this table back in the 2015-16, in the immediate aftermath of the initial bringing together of some of the colleges. And yet, here we are, it seems, starting the process again, almost, it seems.
So all I can reflect on is the fact that James Withers' report came out in 2023, as did our Purpose and Principles document, and we've worked very hard to take into full account everything that was contained within those to ensure that anything we were looking to do in the post-school space docks in and interconnects in appropriate manners with the school reform work, the education reform work that's underway at the moment, because obviously since we're talking about lifelong learning here and it's a journey, so there's a huge amount of reform happening now across the landscape, and it's important to ensure that the connections are right and that through everything we're doing and any changes we look to make, we're achieving the improvements we want to see in the system, ultimately for the benefit of the learner and ultimately obviously the economy.
Now, there's some very important points to consider within all this, and I'm very keen to understand that we've progressed with actually establishing what the roles and responsibilities are of these different groups.
Yep.
The timescales for them reporting back and for the actual reform to take place, and particularly with things like simplification of the funding body landscape and approaches to skills planning.
Yeah, so on the simplification of the funding body landscape, if I start there, as I say, we've had the consultation over the summer. That consultation is now being analysed with advice going to ministers. Decisions will then be made on the back of that. And as I say, within PFG, there's a commitment to a bill within this parliamentary term. So that's the kind of short term, if you like, piece of work and milestone in that space.
So the short term is a year and a half?
Well, legislation takes time to go through the parliamentary process, but as I say, that is certainly the plan in that space.
Well, the assumption is that there is legislation to be passed as opposed to...
So there will be, as was set out in the consultation, there are elements of what the change that is being consulted on that would require legislation. So obviously, once ministers have considered the responses from that consultation, that will indicate which elements require legislation and which do not. Mr Day has been very clear that where legislation is not required, obviously we're keen to move at pace to make the reform happen. I think the challenge in all of this is the importance of that pace, but also the importance of getting things right for learners that are in the system, because we obviously don't want to do anything that will impact on the learning journey of learners in the here and now, whilst looking to reform the system for the future.
Now, coming back to the regional aspect,
yes,
it's been particularly highlighted that Lanarkshire, Glasgow and the Highlands and Islands, which, to my memory, have always had certain problem child aspects to it. How closely, this is maybe more a question for SFC, how closely are these the success or failure of these regional bodies being monitored?
That's one.
Well, I'll let you speak first, but I can add to it. Well, I would say they are being monitored very closely, and that's why we have made the recommendations that we did to Scottish Government. We are working with the current regional strategic boards on an ongoing basis, particularly with UHI as they think about the future of the regional provision.
If I come back to what I was saying previously, unfortunately I've got a long memory on this, and coming back to 2015-16, there was immediate issues around certain of the colleges, and I'm guessing that within these problems may still be continuing. The question is, you know, since these problems have been going on so long, what confidence do we have now that all these things are going to be addressed? I mean, we're 10 years on.
I suspect the honest answer is that there will always have to be change and revision within the delivery of skills and education as the needs of Scotland and regions change. And part of that is about showing that we have the right arrangements in terms of the courses that are available, and that's something that Mr Day, as the Minister, has been encouraging colleges to engage with employers and ensure that they're making the right offer. But part of it as well is about having the right governance arrangements in place and the right leadership arrangements in place, and that was reflected in the consultation specifically around the two regions earlier this year.
Seems very familiar to me from 2015-16. It seemed we were talking about governance issues and everything back then, and how, you know, the regional arrangements were going to be reformed to ensure that all this was strengthened and this and that, but we don't seem to have got there yet.
I mean, overall, I think there are really positive developments across the college sector. The report that Education Scotland, through the interim chief inspector, published earlier this year, presented a very balanced picture of significant reform and improvement and good leadership in some areas, and the need for reform in others. And I suspect that will always be the case, that there's variability across the college sector, and that at different times there'll be different needs. And I think, as the Funding Council have said previously, the arrangements are the circumstances can be fluid and will change between different institutions and context.
I'll watch this initiative with interest, but just to touch on one other thing, which again probably is for the SFC, we don't hear much about them nowadays, but ALFs. At the time, back in 2014, they had £90-odd million in them, and I think it's projected to have about 9 million this year. Now, to what extent do you monitor these and the money that goes in and out? Now, I do realise they're separate entities, but nevertheless, they are there for a single purpose, which is to support the colleges. Now, initially, the large amount of money that was in them was obviously intended for capital projects and so on that had not yet been drawn down and so forth. There's still 9 million in there, which is, you know, to me, it's not an insignificant sum of money, and it's not all the colleges that have got the benefit of that. How do you monitor the good use of that money, how the money is coming into the college and being utilised?
I'll take that, if I may, Mr Beattie. You've covered a lot of what I would have told you. The main thing, which you quite rightly point out, is that they're charitable organisations, and we don't have any regulatory overview of them. They are governed by Oscar and by Companies House, but nevertheless, it's a significant amount of money went into them from the public purse. So we have maintained an overview of them and looked at how the monies are being used, but it's done more as an interested stakeholder rather than as a regulator of that. We have looked at what the monies are being spent on. The majority of it is being spent on estates. We have no control over what the remaining 9 million will be used on, but we will continue to monitor it to make sure that we think it's being used appropriately.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've just got a couple of final questions, and one of them arises from the reviews that took place and reported around the landscape and the institutional landscape and the future of organisations like Skills Development Scotland and who's got oversight of the apprenticeship funding and so on. Now, my reading of it is that oversight and budgetary responsibility for apprenticeship funding is likely to shift from Skills Development Scotland to the Scottish Funding Council. So my first question is, if that happens, what guarantee is there that that money will continue to be applied to the provision of apprenticeship training rather than plug in the financial deficit that we spent the early part of the meeting talking about?
If I maybe say two things. One, it's obvious that I don't want to preempt decisions that ministers will take and announce in terms of the outcome of the consultation that took place on the reforms to the funding landscape. So again, I don't want to presume what will be the outcome of that. The consultation set down a number of different options of how you might organise that, and then obviously ministers will confirm to Parliament the outcome of that. At the same time, ministers have expressed very clearly, and Mr Day has expressed very clearly, his commitment to apprenticeships and the importance of apprenticeships. So I haven't heard anything from ministers that suggest they wouldn't want to continue prioritising the real value that apprenticeships deliver, and that there are a range of different ways in which apprenticeships are funded and delivered at the moment, and that part of what Withers was recommending was greater coherence in terms of how we provide those to ensure effective delivery. One of the things that I think is really strong in the apprenticeship area is the proportion of people who are aged over 25 who undertake apprenticeships. Really important issue to ensure that we're bringing people adding to people's skills, bringing people back into the workforce if they're not. Again, a really crucial issue, and my expectation is that will continue to be a priority, but I don't know if Shirley wants to say anything.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Neil. All I would add to that is I touched on the kind of 5 strands of the reform work and apprenticeships as a key strand in that, and we are looking at what a future model for apprenticeship delivery may look like, and I talked about the interconnections, and one of the key interconnections is where will ministers ultimately decide they want things to sit as part of that simplification, but we're already taking work forward in that apprenticeship reform space around, so there's been the establishment of a graduate apprenticeship enhancement group. We're looking at foundation apprenticeships. We are engaging with training providers to understand the flow of funding for modern apprenticeships, just to get a better understanding of all those funding flows and where things sit, to look to get to a future, what a future model may look like that will include the role of colleges, independent training providers and employers. So there's a lot of work happening in that space at the moment, but as Neil has indicated, this is not, this will continue to be very much a key part of the agenda going forward, and indeed links very closely again to one of the other strands, that around skills, because obviously what we need to be doing is ensuring that young people and indeed those who are reskilling are getting what they need when they need it.
Okay, so what you're saying to me this morning is that there is a possibility still that the apprenticeship funding could sit in the hands of Skills Development Scotland?
No decision has been made by ministers yet on the basis of the consultation that took place over the summer. So, the consultation has been analysed, and we can't preempt where ministers will ultimately decide they want to go. So
the answer to my question is yes, it could conceivably stay with Skills Development Scotland?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I just go to another point, Shirley Lang? I think you said earlier on, which I thought was interesting, that in the context of the programme for government, you said that the government, the First Minister, wanted a national approach to skills planning.
Yes.
Which is something that many people have been calling for a long time. So how do you achieve that when, again, earlier in the evidence session, we were told that individual colleges work with their regional economies and local employer? I mean, how do you get a national strategic approach to skills planning that takes that maybe longer-term view about the direction that the economy is going in, the skills of the future that we will need that might be different or adapted from the skill sets that we are training people for at the moment? How do you reconcile the local and the national?
No, it's a really pertinent question, and it's one that we are grappling with at the moment and taking forward. So you're absolutely right. Scottish Government has committed to take responsibility for skills planning at the national level, while strengthening regional approaches. So there's a kind of parallel set of work underway. So within my area, we've set up a team and a policy unit who are working internally and externally to get a sense of what the key skills priorities are at the national level to start to inform our approach at that level. At the same time, we are working with regional economic partnerships to look at regional skills planning, and that will both inform the national, it's a two-way street, that will inform the national process, but will also inform what that then means at the regional level and where colleges link into that. And we are actively encouraging colleges, and the Minister's been actively doing this to where they are not already, to be making sure that as part of their local offering, they are linked in and engaged with employers so that they understand the skills needs of the community and the region within which they sit. It's all interconnected.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Graham Simpson to put a final question or two to you. Graham.
Yeah, I think it follows on from that, really. I mean, I'm interested in how much flexibility individual colleges have in delivering for the skills in their particular area. Because it seems to me it's really important that colleges ought to be able to identify, through speaking to employers, what skills are required now, what skills are going to be needed in the future, so that they can develop courses that are appropriate to those regional needs. I mean, you know, the situation in Lanarkshire, for instance, is very different to the situation in the Highlands. So you'd expect colleges in Lanarkshire to be delivering different courses to those in the Highlands. So how much flexibility do individual colleges have to do that?
I'll bring the Funding Council in, but certainly from my perspective, colleges have rightly a lot of flexibility in deciding the courses that they provide and what's needed locally, and engaging with local employers. And I think that's a really crucial point you make. It is not just about what the skills needs are now, but what they will be in the future, because you can't, while colleges are incredibly flexible, it takes time to recruit staff and to put in place the necessary infrastructure to deliver different types of courses. So that's why it's so important to have that dialogue, not just about the current needs, but what the future needs are. But I'll defer to SFC.
Sure. So you're right, it's up to colleges to engage locally, said it already, around what their course provision is. And they should be talking to, they are talking to employers, they are talking to employers about future skills needs, what they might need, how they can develop their courses, how they can change them. Both colleges and universities are doing the same thing. Colleges are certainly thinking about their ongoing offering and what that might look like. We've done some work over the last couple of years, coming out of our review in 2021, around Pathfinders projects to look at how we can better ensure that colleges and all the players in that local area work together. Those reports will come out early next year. It's been something we've had to work on and work with them. It's been about what information, what data, what other evidence could colleges or universities get in that local space to be able to understand what was coming down the road in the future. As part of that, it's very much been how do you link up employers, local authorities, chambers of commerce, all the sort of employer representative groups, to make sure that the offering from colleges, universities, and all those linkages between the two as well work as optimally as possible. And we'll take the lessons from the two Pathfinders, one in the north east of Scotland, one in the south of Scotland, and we'll look to see how we can apply that across the rest of Scotland, remembering that everyone's different, so everyone will take different things from it.
I thought, Lynn Ray side, I thought you were itching to get in at one point.
So no, just to add to that, I think just coming back to what we talked about at the beginning about the good news in the college sector, there's some excellent examples where colleges are working really closely with employers. And if we take Nescol in the North East, working really closely with the energy sector as part of the Just Transition project, or we take Ayrshire College working really closely with local employers. So I think there are really good examples of where that's happening on the ground. And as Martin said, through the Pathfinders, we supported 7 pilot projects. So alongside the general findings of the Pathfinders, we will have the finding of the sort of real practical examples of 7 pilot projects that will be published at the beginning of 2025, and the other college regions will be able to use to show how those have been put into practice.
Okay. I'm going to throw this question out. Should colleges be able to offer degrees?
Colleges do provide higher education as part of their their offer. I think there is one college that does provide a degree level recently. I suppose my wider perspective, and again this is more personal than just specifically for ministers, is I think we gain a great advantage from having colleges that are distinctive from universities. I think they provide a different offer to people. Clearly, really high quality education, including to higher education level. Really good examples of innovation as well. I was at the Colleges Awards last week. Absolutely fantastic, one of the most uplifting events that I've been at. Some really good examples of innovation, both in terms of the training being provided, but the education being provided, but also support for students as well, particularly students from more disadvantaged backgrounds, as we were talking about earlier. So, yeah, I think my one qualification would be I want to make sure that we continue to value colleges for what they do separate from universities. But that's just, again, a personal perspective. Martin might have you as well.
Yeah, I think, well, it's a really good question. You start getting into the personal opinions and whether or not you think. But for me, Neil's right, it's about valuing the colleges for what they are. What do they deliver? We need the colleges deliver amazing things. We've talked about them, from people with no qualifications all the way up to higher education qualifications that get people really good jobs, that get them into university, that push their lives forward. So for me, we should be valuing the colleges for what they do. And as we just mentioned, that Pathfinder work we've done, that's about colleges, universities, employers all working together in the one space. It's not just about one or the other, it's about them all being in the same space and making sure that the delivery is right for local employers.
But doesn't it come back to that whole flexibility question? I mean, you could have a really ambitious college that thinks, oh, you know, we're doing something fantastic here. We think we could offer a degree course, but currently we're not able to. We'd have to offer it in conjunction with a local university. Now, maybe that's right, or maybe it's not. I'm just putting it out there to see if there's been any thought given to it.
Again, obviously, well, sorry, Lynn, I'll let you come in first now.
Thank you. I think just to echo what Neil and Martin said about the valuable role that colleges and universities play independently, but there is closer collaboration between colleges and universities happening, and I think that's a really valuable role. And there are really important articulation pathways between college and university. So a lot of colleges and universities are working really closely together. So you start in college and you do your HNC or HND, and you move into second or third year at university. So there are lots of different pathways that where colleges and universities can come together for that more joined up learner journey, and where they can collaborate on course provision. And I think that's something that we'd be very keen to see more of in the future.
I was going to make the same point, but also say it isn't just about people who then move from college into university. There are really good examples of where people undertaking HNCs or other qualifications within colleges as part of that can also go and do courses at local universities as well, and gain the benefit of that, even if they're not intending then to move on to a degree. So having that variability is really helpful in terms of meeting the needs of learners, which is what this is all ultimately about. Okay,
I've just got one more thing I want to ask about. Just going back to the regionalisation question, Shirley. In particular, Glasgow and Lanarkshire has a decision. Well, I think listening to Graham Day previously on this, I think he has decided that the current arrangement should end. Are we just waiting for Graham Day to make a statement on what happens next?
So, as I say, we've consulted on the issue, and that's been analysed at the moment, and it's with ministers for decision. So, no decision has yet been made.
No decision has been made.
And obviously there will have been views expressed as part of the consultation with different perspectives on what you might do, and we would quite rightly have to, well, we are rightly looking at those before ministers take a final decision.
When's Graham Day going to take a decision on this?
I would hope that would be fairly soon, but that's one for the minister rather than me, I think. Fairly
soon? Do you mean by the end of the year?
I couldn't comment on exact timescales.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's something you're going to need to take up with the Minister for Further and Higher Education, Graham. Can I thank very much indeed the evidence that we've been given this morning by our witnesses. It's been very much appreciated. So can I thank Richard McConaughey, Lynn Rayside, Martin Boyle from the Scottish Funding Council for your contributions, and can I also thank Neil Rennick and Shirley Laying from the Scottish Government for your input this morning. I think there were one or two items to follow up, the split between non-teaching staff and teaching staff, redundancies and so on, but we'll maybe follow those up. But for the meantime, can I thank you very much indeed, and I will now move the committee into private session.